Suspect's wife questioned. Investigators learn new information about the Orlando nightclub mass shooting. Tragedy near a Disney resort. Emergency crews search for a toddler snatched by an alligator. Undercover journalist speaks out. David Daleiden reacts to the dropping of one of the charges against him. And a touching moment at the Vatican. At today's general audience, Pope Francis greets a young girl facing a serious operation. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, June 15th, 2016. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with the EWTN News Nightly team. Investigators say the Orlando mass shooting suspect made several stops before he entered the Pulse nightclub early Sunday morning. Mayor Buddy Dyer confirms Omar Mateen drove around Orlando Saturday night, but doesn't directly place him at nearby theme parks. Sources say the suspect's wife tried to talk him out of carrying out a jihadist attack. It's not yet clear, though, if she actually knew about his plans that night. Niur Salman, the wife of Omar Mateen, leaves her home under police escort. Authorities question her about the man she married in 2011, the father of her 3-year-old son. A law enforcement source tells CNN Salman tried to dissuade her husband from doing anything violent, although she denies knowing Mateen's plot to carry out the deadliest shooting in modern U.S. history. Salman also tells authorities her husband had become violent and had talked to her about wanting to carry out a jihadist attack. A source close to the family tells CNN Salman is fully cooperating with the FBI and local authorities, saying all of us will do anything to help and cooperate with them. A source at the couple's mosque in Fort Pierce says Salman wasn't nearly as devout as her husband. She only came to the mosque once in the past 2 months for a party. Mateen went there 3 to 4 times a week to pray. Mateen's first wife describes how their marriage unraveled.
One minute he would be fine, and another minute he would be really angry, violent.
Mateen's ex-wife says she doesn't believe his Islamic religion played a role in the attack. Also, bail set at $2 million for an Indiana man charged in California with possessing an assault weapon and explosives. 20-year-old James Howell, arrested Sunday in Santa Monica before a gay pride parade, pleaded not guilty to the charges. In setting the high bail, Judge Keith Schwartz says he poses a significant public safety danger. Howell, on probation in Indiana, was not supposed to possess weapons or leave the state. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Egypt says it spotted the wreckage of the Egypt Air plane that crashed into the Mediterranean Sea last month, killing all 66 people on board. A ship contracted by the Egyptian government reports identifying several main locations of the wreckage. The search team and investigators on board that ship plan to map the wreckage field for possible recovery. The plane went down en route to Cairo from Paris. Investigators believe it may have been bombed. The body of a 2-year-old boy dragged underwater by an alligator into a lagoon at Walt Disney World has now been found. A number of beaches in the area remain closed tonight. Wyatt Goolsby is here following these latest developments.
Brian, Sheriff Jerry Deming says after more than 16 hours of searching at about 1:45 this afternoon, they found the body of Lane Graves. Deming says Disney has never had anything like this happen in 45 years of operations.
We know that this is a recovery effort at this point.
Sheriff Jerry Deming's cutting off any hope of finding the missing toddler alive. Some 50 people are using sonar equipment as they've been searching a system of lakes and ponds linked by canals to the Seven Seas Lagoon. The boy was snatched last night at a Disney resort where his family from Nebraska was vacationing.
We determined that this 2-year-old child was playing at the edge of the water, probably about a foot or so into the water, when this alligator came up and attacked the child. The father did his best. He tried to rescue the child, however, to no avail.
Wildlife experts estimate the alligator is between 4 and 7 feet long. Helicopters, boats, and an alligator trapper are all part of the effort. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission says there are more than 1 million alligators that live in the state. They can be found in all bodies of water, including lakes, rivers, canals, and even golf course ponds. Alligators are opportunistic feeders that will eat what is readily available and easily overpowered. They regularly lunge at prey along a shoreline. Disney has closed all beaches in its resort area for now, saying their thoughts are with the family. Members of the theme park's wildlife management system add there was a no swimming sign posted at the lagoon. They say Disney works diligently to keep guests safe, removing or killing any alligators they find.
The story here is this is a tragedy and it's terrible, but it's a rare occurrence. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen that often, and we are doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't ever happen again.
Sheriff Deming says the authorities will carry out an autopsy, but it is likely the boy drowned. But the governor of Nebraska says no family should have to experience such horror, and that he and his wife are praying for the parents, Matt and Melissa Graves of Elkhorn, Nebraska. Brian?
Our prayers are with that family too, Wyatt. Family and friends will gather Friday remembering a talented young singer who competed on The Voice. Christina Grimmie was shot to death last week while signing autographs after a show in Orlando. Her brother tackled the gunman, who then shot and killed himself. Investigators say Grimmie had no personal connection with the suspect. Her memorial service will be held Friday in her hometown of Medford, New Jersey. It's a major break from his party's longtime stance against gun control. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump calls for stricter gun laws. Our chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn has more.
Brian, Donald Trump joins President Obama and his rival Hillary Clinton. The Republican presumptive presidential nominee wants to discuss banning gun sales for people on the terror watch and no-fly lists. Exactly what his rivals have advocated for months. Donald Trump continues to campaign on banning Muslims from entering the U.S., but he's open to changing a long-standing Republican policy on guns. He tweets, "I will be meeting with the NRA, who has endorsed me about not allowing people on the terrorist watch list or the no-fly list to buy guns." The NRA, which had endorsed Donald Trump for president, responds, "We're happy to meet with Trump. Our position is no guns for terrorists, period. Due process and right to self-defense for law-abiding Americans." The announcement comes just days after the Orlando terror attack. Trump had said that he's opposed to further restrictions on gun rights. Democrats are seizing the moment.
Every Republican in the Senate is on the record protecting a loophole that allows individuals who are suspected of having ties to terrorism and their ability to purchase a gun.
It's been a do-nothing Congress, especially when it comes to the issue of gun safety. And there's no guarantee that anyone in Congress will have an opportunity to vote.
When buying guns, it's...
In an attempt to move Congress to a compromise, Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy staged a filibuster. But the White House says other terrorist attacks haven't moved the needle on gun laws.
It seems that people think this is it. We're finally going to move on the issue of gun control. Now you have Donald Trump saying he's willing to talk to the NRA. Is there movement? Do you see light? Is this it?
I would like to be optimistic that this unspeakable act of violence will sufficiently tug at the conscience of Republican senators. Maybe seeing the suffering in Orlando will inspire them with some courage to stand up to the NRA.
And the presidential primaries are also over. Hillary Clinton won the last one held here in Washington yesterday. She beat challenger Bernie Sanders, who has yet to officially withdraw. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Lauren Ashburn at the White House. And some Republicans hope Florida Senator Marco Rubio will change his mind and run for re-election. Time is running out, though. Today, our Jason Calvi posed the question to Rubio.
Any thoughts on running for incredible. You've got 9 days until the
Thanks, man.
That comment, or no comment, comes after Rubio told Hugh Hewitt this week that the Orlando nightclub shooting deeply impacted him and makes him think about his service to the country. Rubio did also say it's not part of his family's plan for him to run again for the U.S. Senate. A House committee votes along party lines to censure IRS Commissioner John Koskinen. Our Jason Calvi was there for today's vote and reports from the Capitol tonight. Jason.
Brian, House Republicans say the IRS Commissioner lied under oath and didn't provide them the information that they demanded. Today's committee vote does not mean that the measure will be brought forward to the full House. That decision rests with House Republican leadership.
On this vote, there are 23 yeas and 15 nays.
The House Oversight Committee is calling for Koskinen's resignation and for his pension to be stripped. But it's non-binding, meaning even if the whole House passes it, it's only a recommendation.
We wanted to get the truth about the IRS targeting of conservative groups, and we sent subpoenas to get the information. We had him come testify, and all along that way, it's been a pattern of obstruction. They destroyed 400 plus backup tapes.
Democrats fired back, saying the IRS Inspector General, who is a Republican, cleared the agency.
Quote, no evidence that the IRS and its employees purposely erased the tapes in order to conceal responsive emails from the Congress.
The IRS apologized in 2013 for extra tough scrutinizing of conservative groups seeking tax-exempt status.
426 groups that were targeted. I'll start with number 426, Yuba Sutter Tea Party Patriots. Number 424, Yorktown Alliance for Authentic Constitutionalism. How about 419, Wisconsin Faith and Freedom Coalition?
But Republicans say the apology isn't enough. They say the IRS lied when it said it preserved emails related to this case, even though hundreds of backup computer tapes were destroyed. Democrats say it was not a lie.
It's one thing to say somebody lied. It's just another thing, they may have been inaccurate based upon the knowledge that he had at that time.
And House Republican leaders have not said whether they'll bring forward the censure for the full House's vote. Brian?
Jason, there have been calls to impeach this commissioner. Is this part of that process?
It is. It's a different process, Brian. The censure is a non-binding statement sharing the sense of the House, but the impeachment has teeth. It requires the House to go forward with bringing charges if they vote for it, charges of impeachment, and then the Senate would be the one that convicts. 2/3 of senators would need to vote for a conviction of the IRS Commissioner's impeachment. Brian?
Thank you, Jason. Calvi at the Capitol. And a late decline erases stock market gains today as the Federal Reserve decides not to raise interest rates. The Fed says the overall economy is improving, but the pace of job growth has slowed. Analysts believe the Fed may still raise interest rates next month. A misdemeanor charge is dropped against a pro-life activist, David Daleiden. He was accused of buying human organs during his undercover Planned Parenthood investigation. Now his attorneys work to have a felony count dismissed. David Daleiden joining us by Skype from Irvine, California. David, what's your reaction to the dropping of this misdemeanor charge?
Well, I think it's one more of many indications that these indictments were a sham all along. They were politically motivated charges handed down by a runaway grand jury. And the judge, just 2 days ago when she made this ruling, directly contradicted the argument of the district attorney that these were somehow, even if they colluded with Planned Parenthood, they were still valid charges. She threw that argument out and said this charge was void on its face.
Under our questioning, the White House insists Planned Parenthood provides valuable services and follows the law. How do you respond?
Well, I think that I probably speak for a lot of Americans when I say that this White House needs to get its head out of the sand and needs to take a hard look at the information that's coming out of the Select Investigative Panel in Congress right now, that Planned Parenthood's biggest affiliates and the company STEM Express were engaged in a 5-year-long systematic scheme to violate HIPAA in the course of targeting pregnant patients at Planned Parenthood for harvesting of the most valuable body parts. So there's some really, the allegations only get more and more serious as more and more details come out, and all levels of law enforcement and elected representatives need to take a close look at that.
Yet that grand jury in Texas actually cleared Planned Parenthood of any wrongdoing. Isn't that a major setback?
So that's actually completely false. That has been Planned Parenthood's talking point, that they were, quote unquote, cleared by the grand jury. In fact, the grand jury never even voted on what to do as far as charges against Planned Parenthood. So it's completely inaccurate to say that they were cleared. That's the spin from the Planned Parenthood attorneys in Houston.
David, you're still facing a felony charge of tampering with governmental record. What's your defense there?
Sure. So the full charge is tampering with a government record with the intent to harm or defraud, by which they are alleging using a fake ID with the intent to harm or defraud. Now, that's basically the same discredited legal theory that Planned Parenthood and their allies are bringing against me and CMP in the multiple civil cases in California. This idea that somehow undercover work can count as a form of legally cognizable fraud. And courts across the country have ruled against that claim again and again and again. It's brought up pretty much whenever a major company is exposed in an undercover operation. situation, the courts have said, no, undercover work is not fraud. It's protected activity under the First Amendment.
David Daleiden with the Center for Medical Progress. Thanks for spending some time with us, David.
Thank you.
Coming up, a special celebration for Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI at the Vatican. And St. John Paul II's biographer joins us. George Weigel looks ahead to World Youth Day in Krakow, Poland. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. The spiritual leader of the world's Orthodox Christians says a historic meeting of church leaders will go forward. It's set to begin Sunday in Crete, the first such meeting in 1,000 years. The Russian Orthodox Church and several others say they won't participate. There are 14 independent Orthodox churches. This council hopes to promote unity among the world's 300 million Orthodox Christians. Pope Francis encourages us to open our eyes and hearts to God's love for the poor. He continued teaching on the merciful miracles of Jesus at today's general audience. Alan Holdren, Rome Bureau Chief for EWTN's Catholic News Agency, joining us from Rome. Alan, what did Pope Francis teach today about Jesus restoring sight to the blind man on the Jericho Road?
Pope Francis said that this blind man is there forgotten, marginalized. He said that also today we tend to ignore the marginalized, the poor, immigrants, the hungry. He said that he's even tempted to feel bothered when they get in his path. But he said that that's not Jesus' approach. Jesus looks on this blind man with mercy, restores his sight. And in this Jubilee of Mercy, Pope Francis invites us all to look upon the poor with that same merciful gaze as Christ, with the love of Christ.
Also, Alan, give us a preview of a special Vatican celebration for Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI.
Well, he's going to be celebrating his 65th priestly ordination on June the 29th, which is the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. The day before, on June the 28th, there's going to be a special celebration. Pope Francis will be there. It'll be in the Apostolic Palace. We know that the Pope will receive a special book made for him. Well, the Pope Emeritus, I should say, Benedict XVI, will receive a special book on his priestly life, the last 65 years. One special little detail about this is that Benedict XVI's brother Georg was also ordained on that same day, 65 years ago.
Yeah, Benedict XVI, Joseph Ratzinger, just 24 years old on his ordination day. Alan Holdren from our Rome Bureau of EWTN's Catholic News Agency. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Brian.
In a heartwarming moment at today's audience, caught on camera, the Holy Father greets little Maria Vittoria with a kiss. According to the Vatican, she was scheduled to undergo a serious operation at a Roman hospital today. We pray that all went well. Krakow, Poland hosts World Youth Day next month. Young people from around the globe converge on the homeland of St. John Paul II. St. John Paul II's biographer George Weigel is now the author of City of Saints, a Pilgrimage to John Paul II's Krakow. Between St. John Paul II's following and the popularity of Pope Francis, what are you looking for in this World Youth Day, George?
Brian, this is World Youth Day coming home. World Youth Day, in a sense, began with Karol Wojtyła's father, Karol Wojtyła's ministry to young university students in the late 1940s and early 1950s. That's where his instinct for youth ministry, as we now call it, was formed. That's where the idea that young people wanted to be challenged to lead lives of spiritual and moral grandeur got formed in him. So World Youth Day is coming home. I think it's going to be a great celebration of John Paul the Great. It'll be a celebration of St. Faustina and the Pope who has picked up those themes of the Divine Mercy will be there to lead that celebration.
In Poland, he is just admired and revered. Is his papacy, is his leadership still fresh in the Polish people? Will we see that?
I think it's more emotional than intellectual, frankly. I don't think that the rich social magisterium of John Paul II, for example, has really worked its way into the texture of Polish life, Polish Catholic life. I hope World Youth Day accelerates that a bit. I love Poland. I've spent almost 3 years of my life there when you add it all up. But Poles need to stop looking in the rearview mirror at John Paul II and start looking forward through the eyes of John Paul II.
You spent 12 years with JP2 as you researched and wrote Witness to Hope. How did that affect your own faith journey? Is there anything that just stays with you from that time?
He was a remarkable human being. To experience the depth of his faith could not help but strengthen one's own faith. It's important for people to recognize that while this was a man of extraordinary human gifts, intellectual gifts of personality, he was a great sportsman at one point in his life, it all came out of his prayer. That was the reactor core that everything else emerged from. That's what allowed him to get through the Nazi occupation of Poland during the Second World War. That's what allowed him to be the pivotal figure in the collapse of European communism. That's what allowed him to reinvigorate the Catholic Church. It all was inside out.
You capture that all so well in your books. George Weigel, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Brian.
Up next, U.S. senators consider the global problem of girls denied access to education and guidance in the wake of the Orlando mass shooting, how a Catholic apostolate ministers to those with same-sex attraction. On Wednesday, June 15, thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Obamacare costs could jump 11% next year, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. That foundation studied low-cost medical plans. The president insists health care costs would be even higher without his Affordable Care Act. Hillary Clinton supports it, while Donald Trump wants to replace Obamacare with a new plan. The next sign-up begins a week before Election Day. Advocates push for better access to education for girls across the globe. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee takes testimony today on this worldwide problem.
It enables the girls to know their rights. It enables the women to be empowered to know their rights. Women can own land, can own property, but if they are not educated, they can't even write and they can't read. You're really blocking them out of knowing more and contributing more to society.
Kenya Nataya told senators she was engaged when she was just 5 to be married at 12 to a boy in her village. She says she wanted her life to take a different path. She now has a doctorate and has started an education center to help other girls be educated. She says they need an opportunity to graduate from high school with job skills. Hours after Sunday's Orlando nightclub shooting, a Catholic group ministering to people with same-sex attraction condemned the attack. The group Courage, endorsed by the Holy See, said, "We make our own the words of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which insisted nearly 30 years ago. It is deplorable that homosexual persons have been and are the object of violent malice in speech or in action. In the face of such outrageous violence and loss of life, human words and explanations fall short." Father J.D. Jaffe coordinates Courage for the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia. Can you tell us what Courage is and what it does?
Brian, thank you. Yes, Courage is an outreach to those with men and women with same-sex attraction who are trying to live chaste lives and use the Catholic Church's teaching of sacraments and grace to help them to do so. We have a fellowship, a weekly meeting, which enables us to pray with one another and to support one another with sharing and to encourage each other to practice the faith according to the teachings of the Church.
Can you clarify the Church's teaching on same-sex attraction and people who experience that?
Sure. One of the most important things with the Church's teaching is to remember that there's a difference between a person, the sin itself, and then the attractions that might motivate somebody to do something. And the person themselves is just like all of us. We're all sinners. Every single one of us has to struggle with trying to live the life of virtue. And same thing with somebody who has same-sex attraction. The attractions themselves often are not things that we control. We don't know we know what we're attracted to, but we can't really determine why we're attracted to it or how we're attracted to it. But our attractions don't define us. They don't determine what we do. We always need to make sure that we are in control of our passions. Our passions aren't in control of us. Another good word there is temptation. And we always experience temptation. Married men experience temptation. Married women experience temptation. I, as a priest, experience temptations. And so we don't want those temptations to control us. And so our actions need to be in accordance with the Church's teaching, in accordance with how God has created us to be.
As we discuss this, can you see this tragedy almost as an opportunity for all of us to better understand and have more compassion for one another?
Well, when I heard of the news of the tragedy, my heart just broke. It's such a horrific thing when any life is lost, and every single life matters, and each person has an infinite value and import. And so whenever a life is lost, the world is forever lost because of that, has lost something that's so important. And so we need to reach out to one another during these times to support each other, to make sure that we're praying for the victims, the families, for all of the civil servants who've been part of this. And in the end, what I see is it's a chance for us to grow together in peace and then to really support one another in prayer and in love.
Father J.D. Jaffe with the Diocese of Arlington, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Until tomorrow for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We say goodnight with some pictures from today's papal audience in St. Peter's Square.